Symposium has been co-organized by Ponja Bingkong, co-director Reiko Tomii. We are so grateful to Reiko for her tireless coordination efforts, sharp insights, and of course her scholarly vision. It has been an honor to collaborate with Reiko throughout the last several months, and I believe that Reiko is a true maverick in her own right, so we are so delighted to have her a part of this wonderful event. So, as our program's title suggests, Maverick Practices in Asian Art, Artists, Curators, and Scholars Breaching the Boundaries is the result of interdisciplinary collaboration across our center, across the university, and far beyond. First and foremost, I would be remiss not to mention CAE's director, Professor Wu Hong, Harry A. Vanderstappen, Distinguished Service Professor of Art History and the College at the University of Chicago. Without Professor Wu's support and guidance, our work within the center would not be able to happen. Also, thank you so much to our Symposium Steering Committee, Chelsea Foxwell, Professor of Art History, East Asian Languages and Civilizations, and the College at the University of Chicago, as well as Wei Zhengling, Associate Professor of Art History and the College at the University of Chicago. Also, I would like to thank my fabulous CAEA staff, Liangjun Wu, our wonderful digital collections curator, Greg Pansierra, our content, media, and technology developer, Mengge Cao, our postdoctoral scholar, as well as our brilliant student assistants, Dora Ho and Peter Deng. Additional thanks to Professor Andre Pop, Chair of Art History, for always championing the work of our center, in addition to our wonderful art history administrators, Alyssa Miller, Taya Wilson, and Grace Sarton, for their work as well as for their moral support. Major financial support for this year's symposium has been provided by the University of Chicago's Department of Art History and Empty Gallery, based in Hong Kong. Additional support comes from the Center for East Asian Studies through funding from a Title VI National Resources Center grant from the Department of Education, as well as from Ponja Explorers, the Franke Institute for the Humanities, and donations made in honor of Alan Longino. Promotional sponsors include UChicago's Visual Resources Center and the Committee on Southern Asian Studies. I would also like to give a special shout out to VRC colleagues Bridget Madden, as well as Alex Bolton, for their remarkable dedication to Quack exhibitions, featuring 2 student-curated exhibitions opening today in tandem with our symposium. The first exhibition, Go Calmly Across This Room, in memory, is an exhibition in honor of Alan Longino, featuring works from his personal collection, the Joel Snyder Materials Collection, and by students and alumni of the Department of Visual Arts at the University of Chicago. This exhibition is curated by PhD candidates Lex Ladge, Sibel Tom, and Trevor Brandt, and is located on the 2nd floor of this building. The second exhibition, Drifting Timelines, is a curatorial project examining diasporic identity and historical connections by 3 Chicago-based artists, and is curated by undergraduate student Heyman Kim, and is on the 1st floor. Finally, I would like to offer special thanks to CAA friend and collaborator, Tongji Phil Qian, collegiate assistant professor in the Department of Visual Arts and Harper Schmidt Fellow. Phil is the curator of a special satellite exhibition, Open Carefully, now on view in room 502, Gates Blake's Halls, the former site of Longino IAH. Also, Phil is offering special tours, one leaving from this building at 3:50 today, and then another tomorrow. So if you're interested in visiting this satellite exhibition, there will be a tour leaving after the keynote. Finally, it is my pleasure to introduce Reiko Tomii, who will offer a few words before the keynote begins. Reiko Tomii is an independent historian and curator who investigates post-1945 Japanese art in global and local contexts for the narration of global art history. co-director of Ponja Genkong, a listserv group of specialists interested in contemporary Japanese art established in 2003. She has organized several symposia and panels in collaboration with such institutions as Yale University, the Getty Research Institute, and the Guggenheim. And of course, now Reiko can add UChicago to that list. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Reiko.
Thank you, Ellen. I'm so honored to be here today for this important occasion. And then you're going to understand why throughout this day. So I don't mince words. But first, I want to briefly introduce what Ponja is, because you say Ponja, what is Ponja? So the Ponja's official anonym is Ponja Genkong, which stands for post 1945 Japanese discussion Gendai Bijutsu Kondankai. It's a very mouthful. Ponja Genkong was founded on April 2, 2003 by myself and Miyako Tezuka, who is now director of Deep Bangkok Museum, the first museum of contemporary art in Thailand, which will open later this year. Ponja was set up as a scholarly research, as you heard from Ellen. After more than 20 years, we have established some traditions. The most important is our collectivism. We share the dream of establishing and expanding the study of post-war Japanese art history as an integral and important part of global art history. We have borrowed our motto from Yoko Ono. A dream you dream alone is only dream. A dream you dream together is reality. This is an instruction piece by Yoko dating back to 1972, and then she reaffirms in 2000. We set up Ponja as an online entity, but we occasionally demonstrate our presence physically in collaboration with various institutions. And this is a list of the past conferences and symposiums. You may notice these symposiums. Our 10th is the third collaboration with University of Chicago that began with 2017. And then 2017 conference was really important for us because we expanded our research parameters from Japan to Asia at large. The artist is the primary player in art history. I really have to say this honestly, but without the artist, the art historian or the curator has no work to do. We are out of work. It is Ponja's motto to engage the artists in our scholarly gatherings. As the list shows, we had 7 conferences that we enjoyed with the artist presentations out of 10. It's not a bad track record, I believe. And finally, the tradition of discussion, as demonstrated by the speech balloon in our logo. We especially treasure occasions to discuss in person. We want to engage a broader area. We want to engage non-specialists, and we want to engage our audiences. For this purpose, we devised a 5-minute rule for discussion to facilitate discussion, which you will see tomorrow in walking. So let me switch my gear to the keynote. Yeah, I am the kind of moderator for Keynote Dialogue with Rorimer and Martha Joseph. Rorimer is an independent scholar and curator specializing in European and American art of the 60s and 70s. She began her career as a curator of 20th century art at Art Institute of Chicago here, and then she moved on to independent curatorship. Martha Joseph is a curator and writer specializing in contemporary art and performance. Currently affiliated with the Museum of Modern Art New York. She is part of the curatorial team for the Travis Studio, MoMA's Space for Performance and Time-Based Art. This dialogue and this symposium have been inspired by Alan Longino, who passed away last year, July. For some, he was a fellow student. For some, he was a curator and art historian. And for some, like Anne Martha and myself, he was a dear colleague. Alan's last exhibition during his lifetime was from the desk of Anne Rorimer, On and On, which focused on Kawara, a pioneering Japanese conceptual artist. It was held, oh, I forgot. I have to wear the Longino IAH cap. Where was I? It was held on campus almost 1 year ago under his signature entity, Longino IAH. It sounds very cryptic, but IAH stands for Institute of Art History. For this research, for this exhibition, Anne herself, a pioneer in the study of conceptual art, launched her research archive related to Kawara. Alan created an amazing display that enabled us to inspect the valuable research materials in hands-on manner. I knew Alan since 2016, and we shared a passion for Matsuzawa Yutaka, another pioneering Japanese conceptualist. From 2019 to 23, we had an intense period of collaboration, mounting a series of Matsuzawa's solo exhibitions in the United States, and then in Hiroshima, Japan, and Hong Kong at Empty Gallery. Alan was unique in that he thought like an artist, perhaps more so than the artist Matsuzawa himself. He orchestrated the now famous pink environment that at the Yale Union in Portland, Oregon. It was at once his tribute to Matsuzawa's immaterial yet animated conceptualism and his own aesthetic expression of all his art, if you will. Just taking these two examples alone, Alan was a true maverick who cheerfully breached the boundaries that we think separate our respective tasks. A curator at MoMA, Martha Joseph, helped to posthumously realize Alan's very last exhibition, Philosopher of Her Own Ruin, at Bonner Kunstverleih, together with Fatima Hilberg and Andrew Christopher. In the catalog, Alan wrote, "Books in the exhibition by these artists focus on the space between the violent tumult of the transformation and the peace afforded upon passing to the other side. Loneliness is virtue of the works, as they operate in the area of invisibility. But their bodies are still recognized, their doubts and sensations still fully lived. These new entities demand more from the lives they did before, as they offer an alternative interpretation of necessity." Based on those curatorial collaboration with Alan, Anne and I will discuss two Maverick Japanese artists, Kawara and Matsuzawa Yutaka, in relation to their work Alan exhibited as a curator. We were joined by Martha as a discussant after dialogue. So take it away, Anne, please.
I'm here today thanks to a very fortuitous meeting with Alan Longino at the University of Chicago dinner when we were seated at the same table. When he told me of his PhD on Matsuzawa Yutaka, I suggested lunch because I wanted to know more. At lunch, he rather unexpectedly asked if he could come over to my to look at my artist files I don't know how he knew I had artist files. Yes, since I. Working with artists. With the idea of doing an exhibition with a selection of items to be displayed on the walls of the tiny corner classroom over there in Cobb Hall. It was really hard to find, but it was interesting once you got there. This took place, as mentioned, last spring, and some of you may have seen it. Let's get to the. Oh, here's the invitation, which he devised, and it was based on a pad of paper that I can show you here, and I can hold it up there. Is my mic working? Oh, hope you all heard me. I had this little piece of paper just hanging around my desk, saying from the desk of Ann Rorimer, and he thought that was so interesting. The subject of the exhibition, Alan's exhibition, okay, and its contents were chosen actually totally by Alan, with his aim of looking at aspects of a curatorial / artist relationship as being something worthy of an exhibition, with a nod to any personal dynamic that might have been evident. This is mailing envelope from Louise Waller, who sent me this photo in 1986. So I'll just begin by showing a couple of personal items that Alan exhibited. So this is a photo sent, as I said, it's sent by Louise Waller, and it's Kawara's daughter in 1986, in between her mother on the right and me on the left, as you can tell. And we were at a New Year's Eve party at the home of eminent German artist Gerhard Richter. Look, I don't know what we were doing, lighting a cake or something, or sparklers. And then on a very different note, here is an envelope with articles on color theory that Kawara gave me when I was about to write a text for his 1983 exhibition in Dijon, France. And I think Reiko wants to possibly mention these later. So I'm starting more about Kawara work as an artist, whom I met on the recommendation of internationally known French artist Daniel Buren, and who suggested I meet him and learn about his work. And I followed through and invited Kawara to participate in the Art Institute's 73rd American exhibition in the summer of 1979. Well, I was still looking at it. Kawara himself decided on the selection of different facets of his work, rather curatorial on his part, I guess I have to add. The exhibition included, for one, 2 large date paintings from his Today series, as well as smaller scale paintings. Come to in a minute. Kawara's paintings come in one of 8 predetermined sizes, starting with 10 by 8, 13 inches, the small ones, to the largest seen here that measure 61 by 89 inches. And on the right, one from the Art Institute Permanent Collection. Here it is by itself, with its date lettered in white on a dark background. And I emphasize dark because it's very important to note, which Kawara insisted I note when I met him, that his paintings are never on a black background, just dark backgrounds. And there are many variations of dark backgrounds, as can be seen throughout his work. Greenish or grayish or bluish dark. The day paintings represent the day on which they were painted. And a large one might take around 8 hours, such as this one. Many a person I've been in the Institute where we see this painting in there. What's the meaning of October 31st, 1978? And that's a whole topic you can think about. But the main point is the date of the painting. And then so there's no system, which is also important to point out. No system involved as to the size chosen on any one day, or if smaller ones, how many paintings Kawara might have painted on a day. And if he messes up, or he throws the painting away. And there's no, also important, there's no requirement that every day even necessitates the creation of the painting. Typically, Kawara has painted the date's letters and numerals by hand. By hand, they're done by hand. There's no stencil involved. The surface of each painting is matte without any trace of the 4 or 5 layers of dark acrylic applied with a brush, or the 6 or 7 layers of white paint subsequently applied. Date paintings are striking as presentations / representations of their own date of creation and completion. As images, they dispense with traditional compositional invention and illusionistic features by means of their formal and semantic conflation comprised of letters and numbers. They are declarations of fact, minus a fictional subtext. Begun on January 4th, 1966, the date paintings illustrate the enumeration of days playing out during a lifetime, and the artist's lifetime specifically, that would come to an end in 2014. We have 3 of another group of date paintings in the Art Institute exhibition related to the artist's visit to Chicago in 1975 through September 17th. No, September 17th through September 25th. There were 3. Kawara also chose to show other examples of his aesthetic production in the Art Institute's exhibition. In my Townsend Hudson book, called New Art in the 60s and 70s, Kawara's work is treated in 2 separate chapters. Only artist appears in 2 different chapters. Date paintings are discussed in the chapter on painting, chapter 1, I think it is, and his other work in a chapter, I think it's chapter 4, in a chapter dealing with seriality, sequence, and systems. So here in the vitrine below the paintings are a dozen postcards from his series titled I Got Up At, ultimately discontinued when he lost the stamp from making the work, I think in the late 70s. I would have loved to get a postcard unless it's luck. So this postcard sent to a Frank Donegan from a travel lodge, I think you can see that, shows the Wrigley building. Can you see? Yeah, you can see the Wrigley building postcard. And then, among other works created by Kawara on a daily basis, I think through the late 70s, were one of various series, and this one was titled I Went. Here the artist's peregrination in downtown Chicago. I don't know, I can see it on my screen, but I think you can see the street names. Oh, and then a different day. That's a different day. Um, I don't think it's a detail, I think it's a different day. So the red lines was where Kawara was walking around in Chicago. Oh, just to say, just to interject, a date painting may be found. Oh. Wait, oh. Yeah. Sometimes it can be red. Or sometimes look like some sort of blue, but anyway, here's a red one. Or often a date painting may be found in a private collection or an office setting as here, for example. And I just thought I'd show you the Museum of Modern Art's 3 date paintings from 1979. In honor of Martha Children here. But now for a moment, I want to go back to the Art Institute's painting to explain that every date painting has an accompanying box with a newspaper or news clippings. Sometimes the box and its newspaper are exhibited along with their painting, but this is not at all a requirement. I've hardly ever seen that done, actually. The Art Institute doesn't show the box with its painting. In brief, we might think of a company newspaper as, I'm thinking how to say this, as a kind of validation or kind of a certificate of the work's connection with daily. And of course, I'm stressing the word daily in this instance, with daily life and daily reality and daily realities as evident in the daily news. Kawara gave his early day paintings subtitles, which range from the personal to the political. Now, I don't know if you can read these. This is from his notebooks about, or there's a catalog that tells the paintings subtitles, and I have just a page here for 1967. August 6th, he says, I have a pain in my eyes. August 22nd, in Peking, Red Guards invaded the British diplomatic compound tonight, hurled gasoline cans into the buildings and set them afire, destroying the chancery and damaging the home of Britain's charge d'affaires. Then August 23rd, Expo 67 in Montreal. Well, I don't want to take up my few minutes left with all these subtitles, but I must say, when you read them, it's like sort of fascinating. Going back to the subtitles from early years. He ended up doing such elaborate subtitles by just saying Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, later on. And then in the next few images, I want to give you just a glimpse of Kawara's ongoing work titled I Read, somewhat related, which is formed by his daily selection of news clippings from a paper where he might have been located on that day. And he was quite a world traveler, so clippings from all over the world. So I'll just read the headlines to suggest the range of material found in I Read. So example, this one, the title of the article is Genetic Chemical DNA Found in New Form, and the date is November 30th, 1967. Or what date is this? October 6th, 67. Age of seeds is put at 10,000 years. Or just different kind of topic. 18 killed in quake on Yugoslav Albanian border. So, and then, now rather quickly before closing, I'd like to talk about Kawara's monumental project his 1,000,000 years past, which you see here in 10 volumes, and his 1,000,000 years future, which you don't see here, but also 10 volumes. Another set. The former past set of volumes begin, oh, and I'm gonna read the date in BC, if I know how to read the date, it goes 998 and 31,000 BC, and end in 1969 AD. The future volumes begin in 1981 AD, although I've seen different dates, so I don't know how, maybe they're different sets, so anyway. Begin in something like 1981 AD and end in, here goes another future date, 1,001,980. That's a date. With 500 years represented on each page of the page. Yeah, the page. Again, it's kind of rather absorbing just with these dates. And there's a set of discs, and you can hear people reading the date. That was on my some years ago. Perhaps nothing better evokes the experience of time as it has been unfolding over eons since time immemorial, as years revolves in tandem with the continuous shift from light to dark from one day to the next. Now let's see. Oh, here's a page from I Met. There was an I Met in the Art Institute show, but I don't know in Chicago. But pretty fascinating to read all these names. Sometimes there's only one name is white, but well, can you see the list of the names? It's almost like a concrete poem, but it's individuals that he interacted with. So he was not isolated by any means, painting his day paintings all day long. Okay. I'm going to skip this. Oh, so here we come to the end. Okay, yes. I'm going to conclude with one example of Kawara's very famous "I am still alive" telegrams sent intermittently to people in the art world. This one sent to Saul Witt in, I believe it's 1970. The telegram is the life-affirming and by extension, art-affirming in its newfound application of a real-world form of communication to, quite literally, deliver meaning. So this might be a fitting and rather moving, actually, note on which to end my very brief presentation on an artist who devoted his life to discovering groundbreaking forms of visual representation in the heyday of conceptual art, with conceptual art's basic goal, overall goal, I think I can say this, overall goal of encountering the real world while countering pictorial illusionism. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, yeah, I always want something new when I listen to you. One color never complete. Thank you. Let me just take in the study of global post-war art history, especially from the 50s onward, the idea of international contemporaneity defines the state of new art. We begin to see many instances of parallels in diverse areas in the world. It is therefore imperative to wisely study similar ideas and concepts, similar forms and expressions, and similar strategies and operations without falling into the trap of partial influence discourse. There are two kinds of parallels, connections and resonances. Connection means there was some sort of connection, likely personal or informational. Resonance is a parallel with no or little connection. Either way, it is important to compare wisely and decipher what is similar yet dissimilar. In the case of Kawara and Matsuzawa Yutaka, they were kindred spirits. They respected each other's works. In their conceptual practices, there are few but significant resonances. Ideally, once you find resonances, we need to compare the two to figure out what is similar and what is dissimilar. However, today, due to the time constraint, I will limit myself to pointing out the resonances between these two difficult artists. First, painting was important for both Kawara and Matsuzawa, as Anne pointed out. As Anne showed us in 1966, Kawara devised his masterpiece today as a series of date paintings. In 1964, Matsuzawa invented non-sensory painting as understood from his prior work, Cyclops. Is this in the exhibition at the second floor? So you can see their actual work. Explaining was also important for both in launching a new idea. These two flyers by Matsuzawa are both his works, not mere documents or information. They both address the question of what is non-sensory painting. In brief, non-sensory painting it's invisible to your eye, but I'm sorry. The non-sensory painting is invisible to your eye, but it becomes visible to your mind's eye. In the same way, contemporary astrophysics and quantum mechanics theorize and visualize, for example, antimatter and the paradox of Schrodinger's kitty. These canvases, collectively called title, were first shown in 1965 at the exhibition of Japanese artists abroad, Europe and America, in Tokyo, organized by the National Museum of Modern Art. Kawara specifically sent a right statement to be reproduced in the catalog in lieu of customary reproduction of his work. And then let me quote from these texts. In his brief report on discovery of the beginning of non-sensory painting, which Matsuzawa sent to several people by postal mail in 1964, the text goes like this. In the future, when will it be? However, this principle will be completely abandoned and painting will be changed to that which cannot be perceived by the senses. Today, the images of cosmos and subatomic particles are constructed in a way never understood by the senses. Still, using mathematics and language as its tool, contemporary physics is pursuing the existence of such a world. In a similar manner, non-sensory painting brings about a completely new image severed from the past and existing format, solely in meditating brain. In his composition of words for a catalog, Kawara wrote, if you seriously wonder whether this printed section is a painting or not, you are honestly speaking too far away from what we mean, because you still hold a definite view that literature and art are completely different, artistic media, and perhaps you still embrace that beautiful ideal of purification and synthesization of each artistic medium. And because you still believe that it is impossible to read painting, and that even if such a work existed, that's complete nonsense. In Matsuzawa's case, he soon devised Kannen art, which is to be practiced by the viewer through the power of Kannen or meditative visualization. In Kawara's case, he soon devised his so-called date paintings that can be read as a standalone piece, but it can also be read with various materials encased in the box as Anne showed us. In the third resonance, the two artists both reflected on humanity in the order of millions. Its 1970 work, My Own Death, painting is existing only in time, which Alan and I showed at Yale Union. We installed a panel at the entryway to a huge empty gallery, following what the artist did in 1970 at the legendary Tokyo Biennale. Let us read this short text. My Own Death, paintings existing only in time. When you go calmly across this room, go my own death across your mind in a flash of lightning. That is my future genuine death, and is similar not only to your own future death, but to past hundred millions of human beings' death, and also to future 1,000 trillion of human beings. On Kawara's Million Years was just shown by Anne before. This work consists of a series of binders that contain sheets of paper with 1 million years in the past and 1 million years in the future typed. I once participated in the relayed reading of this work when Guggenheim Museum had Kawara's retrospective. Now, the fourth and final resonance. Both were avid readers, interested in the latest development of human knowledge, especially cosmology. Matsuzawa's voracious interest in knowledge, all the new East and West, informed the origin and evolution of his immaterial conceptualism. They included parapsychology and non-Zen Buddhism, along with quantum physics, as well as a wide array of intellectual and theoretical sources. In the 1980s, he remodeled his immaterial Kannen-based conceptualism as quantum art and subsequently made art for aliens. This is part of Alan's research. In his late years, Kawara included an exact English translation of Japanese scientist book in his exhibition catalogs, demonstrating the snippets of his mind, how his mind works. And then I was fortunate enough, I believe, witnessed this practice 3 times, serving as his translator. Just by looking the titles, we get a hint of Kawara's eclectic and out-of-the-box interests. Philosophical study of cosmic consciousness, paradigm of new science, Principia for the 21st century, how to live as an alien, an introduction to astrobiology. Kawara's intellectual curiosity and research-mindedness is also evident in Anne's archive. By the way, in the mid-1990s, when I was researching for global conceptualism, Kawara once told me, "You must know color theory in order to understand my date paintings." To which I was too intimidated to ask which color theory. It's scary, you know. And have long wondered what he was talking about, because there's color theory. Color theory from Impressionists, or actually get their own work. It became a homework of sorts Kawara left me with. Then I unexpectedly found an answer in Anne's archive shown in Alan's exhibition. Here is the photo in question when Alan showed Anne's archive. And you can see how the audience experience was done in this exhibition. There is a blank space on the blackboard from which one material was taken down and now on the table, and then you can actually take a look yourself. When Alan told me about this scheme, I was naturally curious with this manila folder on the wall. And then I found out this envelope was personally sent from the artist to Anne. And when I emptied the envelope, I found 9 Xerox documents, all related to color. Yes, the science of color and scientific research of painting. He will prepare, oh, okay, I'm sorry, what I'm saying. Okay, I found 9 Xerox documents all related to color. The color theory that the artist had encouraged me to study was in this envelope. Since color theory is beyond me, honestly speaking, I am now consulting with a colleague who is concerned with color theory and scientific research of painting. He will prepare a paper on this discovery, so please stay tuned. But I have to tell you, I was so thankful to Alan for creating an opportunity for me to get my homework done. Okay, almost done. And I am also grateful that the artist left a breadcrumb, so to speak, for us all to pick up, and I must thank Anne to have kept this breadcrumb for us all to see. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you for those incredible presentations and to Ellen and everybody at the University of Chicago for hosting us. Is it better now? Almost?
No.
Turn on fire.
It's on.
Testing, testing. Okay, that was the key word, right? So again, thank you so much. It's a, oh,
I think the batteries are going.
do we have another option or?
Speak up.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. But thank you everyone for being with us today, and thank you for those amazing presentations. And for including me, as you mentioned, Reiko, I'm here on the stage with you both today because we were all collaborators of Alan's, and so I'm grateful to be sharing this space with you and also with everyone in the room who I'm sure many of you are very close with him. He had such a particular way of doing art history, which I think a lot of us in the room know, and a lot of it was based on a notion of kinship or embedded in kinship, which often curatorial work or art historical work is, but sometimes that remains behind the scenes. So I think what's exciting to me today is that that's a bit at the fore. And I remember Alan for years telling me he really wanted to do an exhibition on an art historian. So when that finally came into fruition, I was thrilled. And what I always, how I interpreted that impetus or that statement, that was kind of as a self-reflexive gesture or as a moment of self-interrogation, a desire to better understand how it is we do art history and what it is to be an art historian through reflecting on the practice of a mentor. Alan did 3 shows at Longino IAH. The first 2, how does this work now?
Same deal.
Same deal. The first 2 shows. No, I don't mind projecting.
Sorry.
I thought of the first 2 shows as doing art history, and then that last one as thinking about asking why we do art history, how we do art history. So one thing that struck me when I saw the show was that the centrality was not just your intellectual work and your collaboration with Kawara, but also your incredible friendship. So you saw kind of those iterations of texts that you were setting forth to each other, but then you also saw beautiful images of his daughter, for example, that you showed us in the PowerPoint presentation. So there's really like a true. It was great to hear that story about him asking you at a dinner. I hadn't heard that before, but could you tell us a bit more how you felt when he,
Oh, it was to lunch.
it was lunch, but how did you feel when he asked you to be the subject of a show?
Yeah, I think I was somewhat surprised. I mean, it just never occurred to me to
Yeah,
have that happen. But, you know, I was open. Yeah, but I had no idea what form it would take. You know, I'm picturing all this files in the room, and what am I ever gonna do with them? And, so he sort of took charge. I really didn't have much to do with it, except when it happened. And he would come over, we'd have lunch, usually, just because he'd come over at lunchtime. And, he'd go through the files, and he said, oh, you wanted to do the subject on Kawara. And of course, I was suggesting all kinds of other artists. I said, oh, what about Dan Graham? I have this idea. Well, I have lots of stuff on Dan Graham. And then when I saw the final result, I saw, oh my God, couldn't have done more than he did. And then there was just a sliver of material.
right. And it was clear when you walked into the show that there was a lot more, because for those of us who experienced it, he would absolutely tell you if you wanted, you could get the curatorial spiel, and he had extra files that weren't necessarily on the wall that yeah, if you engaged him in conversation about it, he would be like, oh, well, actually, there's this piece of paper that illustrates exactly what you were saying. So when you were gathering your archive, how did you imagine it being used?
My archive?
Yeah.
I just thought of it as getting everything off the pile of papers all over the floor. Of my book. It was just a organizational. I didn't think of it as my archive. And then I would put research, you know, articles, clippings from exhibition announcements, clippings from articles, just to make order. And then I thought, I don't know what's going to happen with this, but at least it's organizing everything off the floor. Because I have a lot all over the floor.
And then how did it feel having the tables turned? Like you in your practice have done shows, organized the information of artists through exhibitions throughout your practice, and then all of a sudden somebody is turning their eye on your.
Yeah, I found it very intriguing, just the idea of wanting to do that. And I must say I was sort of amazed when I actually saw everything on the wall. Or the walls of the file folders. And it was all objectified for me as things I had written, or the color theory articles in a folder or whatever. So it objectified pieces of paper in file folders in the cabinet. So it was very interesting idea of his. Yeah.
Did you?
Is this? Yeah.
I think folks can hear. I think folks can hear. What was it like working with Kawara over the many years that you were? How many years did you know each other?
Yeah. Well, first I met in the late '70s, showed his work at the Art Institute, as I said, and then kept in touch mainly because I guess. Oh, I wrote some articles. Yeah, so I needed to ask him how all this series worked and about the taping. Now I still have questions I forgot to ask. But I thought I could ask the local, but I flew out of touch. So somehow we just kept in touch because I would make visits when in New York. And he would sort of whatever. Anyway, he was very friendly and open. He didn't come out in social life. But he is the local. So I took all these fast notes. I went with a friend of mine from MoMA, actually, who was interested in his work, who bought the painting.
Who was it?
Cora was there.
Yeah.
And anyway, he's still laughing. We were taking notes. And then something came up about turtles. And to this day, and I see there's some turtles somewhere on his
catalog colors. And to this day, we don't know what he meant by talking about turtles. But he said some interesting things, like one thing he did say about his painting color was, it's about dark and light, and because he spoke a lot about the cavemen in the cave, and the dark of the cave versus the light of the day. So that was interesting to think about, right?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, I mean, Reiko's on it from from an academic perspective, but I was curious to hear your interpretation of that comment that you have to know color theory to understand the day paintings.
Well, I must say, I'm glad Reiko's here to deal with all this. Because I took the folder home or email that I forget. And I just couldn't make the correlation. So I think I did talk a little bit about color in his work, as opposed to color in Klein, the Tesson, sort of what is the proportion aspect. And yeah, that was hard for me and still is. Because yeah, I don't understand color theory either. So I'll be interested to see what Reiko comes up with.
Yeah.
No, not me, my colleague.
Your colleague. No, I mean, at your,
The two of us.
at your instigation.
And Reiko, I want to turn the same question to you. What was it like working with, well, your interactions with Aunt Flora?
Yeah, that's a big story. So I need a slide. Can I have the slide again? Can we get the slide on? Oh. Yeah, I'm sorry, because it's a little complicated. Anyway, Kawara is, okay, you have to know this. Kawara is not an easy artist. He has actually lots of rules. Like he didn't give interview artist statements. He didn't publish biography, bibliography. He didn't show up at parties and opening, as Anne said, no social events. And he didn't mix Tokyo works and New York works in one exhibition. And especially after Scream Against the Sky, the exhibition of post-war Japanese art held at Guggenheim curated by Alexandra Monroe in 1994, another one came up, didn't show New York work in a Japanese survey, which makes my work really difficult when the, I want to curate the, the global conceptualism Japanese section. How do you do that with Don Kawara? Like he's a Japanese artist, right? Anyway, through my the research of printed painting in Satsukaiga in the late 1950s, I realized Kawara wanted a creative response to his work from us, just like Marcel Duchamp wanted us to do, although they said the same thing almost in around the same time without knowing each other. He doesn't really want art historian to talk facts. And then for the global conceptualism, so like the time I heard about I was told about color theory was actually when I was doing research for global conceptualism. And he told me from 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 10 o'clock at night, like 8 hours straight, don't include me in your exhibition. Not only my section, but the exhibition as a whole. Tell your museum, I don't want to be in. So I didn't. And then like out of 10 sections, North America is another likely place, he could be included. And then the curator, Peter Warren, actually included him. Sorry, he actually included him. The Telegram piece, maybe several, 6, 7, maybe 10, I forgot. But he found out. I mean, the Kawara found out. He called me. I told you I don't want to be in your exhibition. I said, I'm not including you in my section, but you know, my work is in in the exhibition anyway. Yeah, that's a different curator. I cannot control the curator other than myself. And then so please do talk to them. And then he talked to them, the museum. And then basically museum withdraw half of it in the collection of private people. They kept institutional collections. So that's the, a story about it. Anyway, he withdrew his work from the Alexandra Monroe's Scream Against the Sky exhibition, and then that was a big thing, and then he did it again. The only thing is, I'm an art historian before being a curator. I included him anyway. He didn't know. He didn't know because he didn't call me and then complain to me. So how did I do that? So I have the piece called Toneas now and then Hikosaka now Yoshi. It's a chronology. It's a conceptual understanding of how avant-garde art and contemporary art came into being in Japan over 50 years. And then I believe this is a great piece of conceptual art. So I included 2 volumes of magazine. And then what I did is there's a 1 page included reproducing on Kawara printed paintings. So I decided to show this page when I include the magazines in the vitrine, and then in the work, you have to reproduce a work, right? So I decided to reproduce this page. So he's in my show, in my catalog essay, and then here's the printed painting. It's and then I could reproduce officially this painting thanks to A. Arakawa. We shared the interest in Kawara, and then so I wrote some piece on the comparing him and Kawara, and then I talked about the printed painting. So he said let's reproduce, and then he got permission from the foundation. I didn't have to do anything. I'm so happy that I can tell you about my super.
That's a great story. Thank you, Reiko. And talk about Maverick practices. Since you brought up exhibitions, I'm curious. I was thinking, one thing I think this keynote nicely highlights is the importance of exhibition making as a space of doing art history. And it's a question for both of you, but how do you think about exhibition making in relation to your practice of pushing, writing, and academic work? You can start.
Yeah, well, I started as a curator. I didn't do a PhD, so I couldn't teach. And I wanted to work at a museum. And it's so different to organize an exhibition and trying to write an essay of any length. It's so hard to structure an essay or a text or article or a book. So working with objects, but you have to select what objects, and you can't do too much. You can only put so much in one exhibition area. So it's a totally different process. But I think that museum works, more fun than sitting at a desk and writing.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly more the sociality of it.
And it's more active and interactive with people. Although one can talk to artists for sure about their work, but I don't know, doing an exhibition, I would say, is much more satisfying as a start to it.
How did you feel, Reiko?
Well, It's another long one, so I wrote it up, so you bear with me. So to me, an exhibition is first and foremost a site of object lessons, an occasion to learn from the artists and their works. And the global conceptualism was my very first exhibition project. That was in 1999. It was, and I felt so lucky to be given a space of my own to do justice to the Japanese artists I selected on their terms to accept the idea of, multiple conceptualism. Now, this is before we start talking about multiple modernism, actually. And then exhibition was a success, more or less. It reviewed well. And then, however, there was one major criticism that there was no comparison of lookalikes or what I now call resonances. And then, if you go through, the entire exhibition, you find, oh, I saw this before. Yeah, in the Japanese section. And then, okay, now Latin American section, we see something, talking to each other. The criticism it was, why don't you make the object talk to each other rather than, putting a nation, kind of a linear histories, 10 of them. And then at that time, I had a good way to explain why not. Because think about my experience. I have to have my own space to explain what Japanese artists was doing without being bothered by, so what about the Europeans, Americans, Latin Americans? The focusing on local was so important because I have to tell their stories, not their story in relation to other people's stories. And then that's a part of what we do in terms of local, the area studies, more or less. It's not the only thing we do, but that's a very important part. We think in line of the local discourse, local reality, local ideas. Then, however, I knew what they are saying too. Why can't we do comparison? I don't know how to do it in the exhibition space yet. It's still, to me, it's a kind of difficult thing. But that question, 1999, bothered me, haunted me all along. So finally, I came up with the answer how to do comparative art history, and then published 2016, Radicalism in the Wilderness. Because that was my answer to those critics. Why can't you do that? Okay, how about doing this way? And I was so excited when I sent my manuscript to the publisher in 2015 that I finally solved this puzzle that I shared with Jane Farber, the lead curator of the Global Conceptualism at Queen's Museum. So I had to call her and tell her, I wrote this. I want you to read this. I finally figured it out. And then, I'm sorry. She said she was busy preparing the John Jonas's exhibition catalog at the Venice Biennale. And, but I will read it, she said. And then she went to Venice to celebrate, and then she died over there. So I don't know if she actually did it or not, but I think she did. And then, so I'm sorry. It was kind of what art historian can do out of exhibition, only in art historical discussable way.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm also, I'm thinking about like the question that I decided not to ask you that now I guess I'm maybe subtly asking by saying I'm not asking it is, this question of looking back at the 90s and that important moment. The two exhibitions that you both did on conceptualism happened only a couple of years apart, I believe, or very close in time. And so this thinking about what questions or what interrogations feel urgent at any given moment. And so I wonder, in your description of your curatorial methodologies, Reiko, if one, you couldn't have done one without the other? Like, is there something about writing a history of Japanese conceptualism that you felt you had to do in that one way first, that you had to do through local conceptualism before you could come to a different kind of comparative art history in an exhibition context that you then experimented with later from a disciplinary perspective?
Yeah, it is always back and forth because when I did the radicalism in wilderness as an exhibition at Japan Society in 2019, 3 years after the book, I thought I knew everything. No, like when the I set up the works. So works speaks, but then works make me ask more questions. And then artists still living came to see the exhibition, and then we start talking, and then we have conversations, and then, oh, by the way, this was so and so, and then like, you didn't tell me before. Now you tell me. Now I have to rewrite it. Not necessarily book, maybe a new essay or a new book. So it is always like that because even when you think you are, you've done it. Because for me, that's why art is so interesting because art is a living thing actually. They actually respond to us. We respond to them. Yeah, and then that piece, either exhibition for curators or the publication for like art historian.
I loved the resonances that you set up for us in your presentation, Reiko, and I was just thinking about maybe other resonances too after listening to both of your presentations back to back and seeing some affinities. I was thinking about the ways in which both Kawara and Matsuzawa kind of question linear notions of temporality. I was thinking about like time as produced and time as a social construct, thinking about the date paintings and their relationship to the newspapers, which are either shown or not shown. And I was also thinking about the telegrams and the theme of death kind of coming across in both practices too, and the telegram being, maybe before my generation, something that was used as kind of like a death notice, so that the radicality of using it as a strategy to affirm the living. Did additional thoughts come up for either of you on kind of time and ephemerality and mortality as we're sitting here today? I think I'm feeling like very tender, and so I'm leaning into it.
I think those two artists really thought the humanity as a whole. Like thinking about science is one of the things, thinking about it is some of the thing, but they had a very long view. Like I really admire Kawara kind of curating his show for kindergarten kids. That's a long view because he's looking at future. And then Matsuzawa saying, by 20 to 22, humanity will vanish. Well, we don't necessarily take that literally, but like we see the warning for how we live. And then nowadays it's so precarious. It's a real warning he issued without knowing it could be so dire. So they both share long view of history and humanity. I mean, that's actually a sign of great artists, I think.
I think the long view is the framework in the background of Kawara. I don't think it's in the work itself. I think the work is very much grounded in the date, whatever's happening on the date, whether you're reading the street or in your place or whatever in the newspaper and so on. And the I am still alive. It's very affirmative. It's not really about I'm still alive, but I won't be forever. There's nothing like that in there. And the telegram was also used because it was quicker means of communicating. Right. And it also it's verbal. Or use representation as it happens through the telegraph office. So I think it's a lot just about new ways, new forms of representation, not sort of dwelling on, life.
Yeah, which is.
I
goes
think,
back
I
to-
haven't quite spelled that one.
That goes back to what Reiko was saying about both artists questioning what it means to make a painting or what a painting is or can be.
Yeah, that's probably really important.
I want to open it up to audience questions, but before we do so, I just want to return to the exhibition in Cobb Hall, which, it felt so special to me, partly because of the context. It was in this educational institution, and Alan wanted to create a gallery, and I think it spoke to the spirit of seeing what you have around you and doing the most with what's available to you. So kind of leveraging his status as a student to do a kind of different kind of art historical or curatorial work. And there was an intimacy to this experience of being there, sitting around the table, like you showed in your images, Reiko, having the ability to talk to Alan if you wanted to, or look at the material, take the materials down off the walls, which he readily did for anyone who visited, to look through them. And I was trying to think through, like, what did that show mean in that context? We see archival shows all the time, but often they're in institutional settings, museums, libraries. So one thing I'm thinking through, I'm curious to hear your perspective, is what did that archival exhibition do in that context that was different from how it might operate in a different institutional setting?
So you're asking us or them?
Either of you, or it's open to the audience too, if folks have thoughts.
Oh, perfect.
Can I say something, or Denise, why don't you say something?
Okay, Alan's mom. The year before, of course, he started it, what, in February, the fall of 23? Would that be right? The fall quarter. So he had me walk around with him to look at the different classrooms. And he just was so excited to be able to share. And he wanted artists from all different parts of the art world. I mean, he wasn't just interested in one part. He would see people and he would help rise them up, like the artist in New York with the kombucha, and just people that had not been, and the lady over in Europe, people that hadn't been active in art for a while that he really loved. And he got so interested in them, he wanted to help promote all artists. You know, he really had picked a place out that he wanted to have as an art gallery. But for him to, I think it was fantastic that he did these quarterly shows. So it showed the doctoral students at UC what else they could be doing in the art field besides just their schoolwork and their dissertation, that there's so much more out of the box. And when you look at the topic of this today, to me, Alan was a maverick. I mean, in 7th and 8th grade, he was wearing his Vietnamese suit to his junior high winter dance instead of wearing a navy blue blazer and khakis. So to me, he was a maverick way back in the beginning. So I don't know. He was so excited to be able to show other people what else there was out there and just keep the art world going. So that was his vision. And I'm really excited to see Phil's to go over to the hall.
That was a real nice. So, this is it.
So why don't we end the keynote here? The reception for the two quack exhibitions will begin after we exit. So there will be a catered reception in the Quack Lounge. So feel free to move around the spaces, both the first floor and the second floor. And as we mentioned, Bill will be leading a tour. We'll be leaving Quack at 3:50. So thank you. Once again, thank you so much. And just another note, we will reconvene back in this space at 5 p.m. for 2 artist presentations. So thank you so much.